to strike the count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Matt, it's Sunday night, and thank goodness none of us care about the NFL, right? It would suck to be a Raiders fan or a Rams fan or anything like that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I don't envy the position you've been in. Rough sports weekend, I think, in the Spiegel household. Meanwhile, my wife and I are shaping up for an interesting week because we're on opposite ends of the USC-UCLA rivalry, so we'll see how that goes. Obviously, one of those teams is coming off a big win on Saturday. I won't say which. But yeah, other than that, things are good.
Yeah. I can't say things are good. The Raiders should be firing their coach 9 games into his tenure. Oregon loses to their hated rivals over the weekend, blowing up some playoff chances. But here's the good news, Matt. Believe it or not, this was the tease of all MLB weeks because there was a lot of news. You think the season ends, you catch your breath, you wait a couple months, and then things start to heat up. But they give you that 1 week right after the World Series ends where there's all sorts of stuff happening. That's why you and I are here. So here's a plan for tonight. We're going to talk qualifying offers, a bunch of news on that front. We'll talk Trea Turner, some of the rumors around Carlos Correa, Dansby Swanson as well. We'll talk Tyler Anderson getting the qualifying offer. I know this was something I kept telling people it's going to happen. We had people in the comments on every single video saying, this is stupid. No. Well, surely it does. And there's some interest from other teams on Anderson. We'll talk Clayton Kershaw, who did not receive the qualifying offer, but there's some rumors that 3 days ago, haven't really materialized yet. So we'll get there. We'll talk Blake Treinen, some bad injury update from him. And then Justin Turner, Hanser Alberto, some other news on that front as well. But let's start with Clayton Kershaw because I think he's the biggest name that the Dodgers have. And this was just a bizarre week. So the headline here is this: Clayton Kershaw does not receive the qualifying offer. And that was not unexpected. I think all of us were sort of like, we don't think he'll give it to him because usually they give him some time to make some decisions. Don't give him that 5-day window where he has to decide, am I coming back or not? So no qualifying offer. But this on the heels of the Dodgers seemingly considering giving him the qualifying offer based on some comments from Andrew Friedman. They don't give him the qualifying offer. Okay, fine. And then Thursday night, I believe Ken Rosenthal reports the Dodgers are close on a contract. Some other folks confirmed it. And that was Thursday, and it's Sunday, Matt, and we haven't gotten anything. What do you make of this whole Kershaw situation?
Yeah, well, first I'll peel the curtain back a little bit for our viewers in our lost files because it became outdated relatively quickly. We sort of discussed hey, maybe one reason for the qualifying offer was that it's not needed because they're on the verge of, potentially agreeing to something anyway, right? And we thought maybe not, and sure enough, shortly after we finished hitting record on that one, that came out. Then, like you said, there was the report that him and the Kershaw and the Dodgers were close to agreeing, and then, Dave Luna just alluded to, John Heyman did say that they have agreed. But again, what we need to remind the viewers of is there's still a difference between these national reporters saying, they've reportedly agreed to a contract, as in it's not finalized yet. I can tell you that the Dodgers have not announced it, have not sent out the press release. It doesn't mean, I don't think, anything negative, I don't necessarily, right? It could be just a matter of, hey, he's been away and they need to get him to do a physical. And my guess is at this point, it could happen Monday morning. It could happen Tuesday. There's no real rush if both parties have already agreed on, the figures and the terms. And it's just a matter of kind of the final signature on the dotted line.
Yeah, I'm imagining Clayton Kershaw, Andrew Friedman having a conversation. Hey, we're not going to give you the qualifying offer. Great. Here's the number, $17-ish million, what's been floated. And then Kershaw says, sweet, we're going camping for the next 3 or 4 days, 3-day weekend for Veterans Day. We'll just see you guys on Monday, Tuesday. We'll finalize it then. And then all of a sudden the Rosenthal story breaks on Thursday night. And Kershaw's just on vacation, has no time to sign this to make it official. That's how I'm imagining in my head. But I'm with you. I mean, nothing to worry about if you're a Dodgers fan. If anything, I think we should be celebrating because Kershaw, by all accounts, is going to come back. I can't see anything changing at this point in the game. How are you feeling about Clayton Kershaw, the player, coming back to the Dodgers, Matt?
Still pretty good. I mean, I know you and I have pretty much been aligned in that, hey, we understand there's concerns about the back injuries. And unfortunately, Kershaw's going to try, he has said, he's trying to manage it the best he can. I think realistically, you just have to expect he's going to spend probably at least 2 or 3 weeks on the IL at some point, right? Once a season. Yeah. And I think the Dodgers typically, we'll have to see. They do have more holes in their rotation moving forward than I would say in years past. But historically they've had the depth to sort of withstand losing him for multiple weeks. But I think it can't be understated that, one, not only is a franchise legend back, but two, they got this taken care of early because, like I just alluded to, the Dodgers have starting pitching needs. And so at least you get Clayton Kershaw. You more or less know what you're going to be receiving in him. And so you can plug him into your picture and then operate accordingly as the rest of the offseason unfolds.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, exactly like you said, I feel like a broken record when I say this. The Dodgers, it's quality, it's not quantity. The Dodgers don't need Kershaw to make 30 starts. They don't need 200 innings out of Clayton Kershaw. They need 100 to 110, and they need him ready once the postseason starts. As long as that's in play, then we're good. And Clayton Kershaw, as we've said multiple times on this show and through videos we've recorded, he was as good this season as he has been in 5 or 6 seasons as far as his effectiveness. Yes, the velocity was down, but the velocity's been trending in the wrong direction for a while. And, I know a half a mile an hour seems like a big deal, but when it's 91.3 to 90.8, I'm not sure it matters quite as much as when it's 98 to 97.5, that kind of a thing. But Clayton Kershaw, again, the first bit of qualifying offer news that we're talking about tonight, does not receive it. But again, all reports are that Kershaw will be back. $17 million, that sound about right to you, Matt?
Yeah, that's the figure I've seen thrown out. I believe only Mike DiGiovanna of the LA Times is the only person who's reported that. That's the other thing, too, that's kind of interesting about this is there just haven't been, like, usually you get the initial wave, right? Like the Ken Rosenthal report, hey, the Dodgers and Kershaw are close. And then you'll get the report like we did from John Heyman either the next day or 2 days later. Okay, they've, reportedly agreed. And usually right after that, you see like it's X amount of dollars, it's 1 year, it's incentives, this and that. My guess is it'll be anywhere from 17 to 20-ish million, similar to the 1-year contract he re-signed on for 2022. And it'll have incentives built in and all that. And I think, that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the second name here as far as qualifying offers come, and that's Trea Turner. On the scale of 1 to 10, how surprised we are that Trea Turner received a qualifying offer. I think it's a 0. Maybe it's off of the scale on that side. He gets a qualifying offer. Nobody is expecting him to sign it. And the reports this week, MLB.com, Juan Toribio, saying it is unlikely Trea Turner, it's more likely that Trea Turner is gone. Not to say that the Dodgers aren't necessarily interested, but the most likely outcome, according to sources, is that Trea Turner not returning to Los Angeles. We felt all along this didn't ever feel like a perfect match, a perfect marriage. Based on the years and the money that I'm sure Trea is looking for, this isn't surprising to me. Were you surprised to hear Toribio report it's unlikely he returns to Los Angeles?
Yeah, not at all. I think, short of the Dodgers basically going to Trea and saying, hey, like, here's a blank check, write your number, and okay, let's get this done. Like, I think you had to certainly bet on the most likely outcome was that he would sign with a team other than the Dodgers. And the Phillies have been mentioned as, potential suitor. The Seattle Mariners have been speculated about, not so much as having confirmed interest yet, but as potentially getting into that market, depending on how free agency shakes out for them in other areas that they're looking to address. Again, like, similar to what we saw with Corey Seager, I think the Dodgers will certainly be, aggressive in their bidding and trying to re-sign Trea, but I think that they'll have a line in the sand that they just won't go past for, kind of X, Y, Z reasons.
Yeah, well, let me push you on that because just to dig in, you say you think they're going to be aggressive. With Seager, I think they were aggressive. I think they made clear, hey, here's an offer. Here's where we're at. Do you think that's how they handle it with Trea? To me, it almost feels like, and this is not inside information, it's just guesswork, that maybe they let Trea sort of float around for a little while and maybe don't even make a real offer to him and just say, hey, why don't you test the waters? Why don't you see what's out there? And if you want to circle back to us, you can. To me, I wouldn't call that aggressive. I think we're describing different things. So do you think the scenario you're envisioning is the Dodgers coming to him and saying, we'll give you 7 years, $210 million or whatever the numbers are, that's probably a little bit below market value, but that they're proactively pursuing him? Or do you think they kind of just hover in the background and say, hey, if nobody blows you away, let's talk in a couple months?
That's a great question. And I think you're right in the sense that it probably, when instead of aggressive, I think at least making an initial offer, kind of being proactive, if you will, I think is what we would see or will see if it's happened yet. Andrew Friedman did a couple interviews on MLB Network last week, and he was asked about different topics, and Trea Turner was one of them. And if I remember correctly, the question directly was, hey, have you made him a contract offer yet? And in typical Andrew Friedman fashion. He answered the question without answering the question. So that's certainly fair. I think whatever initial offer they may make, which I think isn't beyond reason to believe that they would have or did, would be on the lower end. However, I don't think it would be. And I think it would be them trying to say, hey, like, let's get this done. Like, let's see if this works, right? Let's throw it out there and see what happens. I think what's interesting too is, there's been a lot of smoke. I know we'll get into it a little bit. There's been a lot of speculation with Carlos Correa, who seems to have grown in popularity amongst some of the fan responses that I've seen to things that we've posted. There's also Xander Bogaerts. There's Dansby Swanson, who I know we'll get to next as well. So it'll definitely be interesting because as much as the Dodgers have a need at shortstop, there are also, multiple kind of upper echelon options for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I see some folks in the chat asking about Justin Turner's. My burner account, apparently, Matt, is in here. It's not even a burner because it's my face and my name. They were referencing East Coast time earlier, so I think they gave themselves away on that one. But we are going to get to some Justin Turner talk as well. And I see Scott asking a question about the report that the Rays may be looking to move some of their pitchers. Hold on to that. We'll take questions here at the end. But let's get to what you were coming around to when it comes to shortstop options, and it's the backup options, if you will, to Trea Turner. Carlos Correa and Dansby Swanson. John Heyman had a report on Swanson that the Braves made him an offer. If you want to talk about an initial lowball offer like the one we just referenced with Trea Turner, how about this? 6 years, $100 million for Dansby Swanson. That was the Braves' initial offer. Swanson reportedly countered that, but Heyman included in that report that the Dodgers view him as a viable option behind Trea Turner and alongside Carlos Correa. Of course, like you said, there has been lots of smoke on the Carlos Correa track. Let's talk Swanson really, really quickly. Dansby Swanson's an interesting one to me just because when you look at the numbers, he's coming off of the best season he's ever had in his career, and yet he's coming off of the best season he's had in his career. And so while on one hand you want to say, hey, look at this, 28 years old, 6.4 wins above replacement, the numbers across the board are really, really good, 25 home runs, an OPS of about 800 from a shortstop who plays above average defense. That all sounds great to you. Then you look back on previous seasons, 3.4 wins above replacement in 2021, 2.3 in 2022. That's a shortened year, so that probably would have been around a 4.5 to 5 year, 2 in 2019. So a solid player, but not a great player. The Braves made him what I think is a reasonable offer, $16-ish million a year, but he's surely going to get more than that on the open market. So as far as the Dodgers go, if we want to believe MLB.com and Trea Turner is most likely gone, how would you feel about an $18 to $20 million a year contract for a guy like Swanson?
Yeah, I think that's a little high for Swanson. I personally, I think most evaluators, most in the industry, writers, reporters, and all that view him as definitely, a tier below your Trea Turner and Carlos Correa type thing, and I think that's fair. So, my suspicion is, if Dansby Swanson wants a contract similar to what they're potentially going to get, I don't see that. Under the right terms, I would be fine with Swanson. I think he's certainly a good shortstop. Like you said, I would just have concerns was this year kind of an outlier, or is it a sign of things to come? It's always a little, I think, gives you reason to pause when the big breakout season comes right before free agency, right? We've seen it, and not just in baseball, multiple sports. A player will have, the season of his career, and then the narrative quickly becomes, they wanted to do that, they got paid, and then they regressed. And that hasn't always been the case. I think in some situations that's held true, but my preference would be, I'll phrase it this way, my preference would be to overpay a little bit for Trea Turner than to go to Dansby Swanson.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. Again, I think that $16-ish million number that the Braves offered him at 6 years is honestly, I wouldn't hate that contract if it ended up. Obviously, he's not going to say yes to it. The thing about Swanson is he's about to turn 29, so the age isn't as much of a concern. He doesn't seem like the type, as far as the way he plays the game, that's going to regress. Defensively, he's solid. He grades out positively defensively, depending on what metrics you look at. We've talked plenty of times about whether you can trust defensive metrics at all. And again, when I say that Swanson had an outlier year, he was fantastic this year. 25 home runs, like I said, 800 OPS. But he was really good the year before, 27 home runs, 750 OPS. And the year before that, 800 OPS, 10 home runs. That was in just 60 games. And so I think sort of in a normal season, Dansby Swanson is an above-average shortstop in Major League Baseball, and in the outlier season, he's an elite shortstop. And so the question is, which of those are you going to get? We know which one you're going to pay for. It's going to be closer to the elite guy, which good for him in a contract year, having the year that he had. But I'll be just curious to see how his market plays out. All of that said, Matt, I don't know why Swanson feels like the best fit for the Dodgers based on historically kind of what they've gone for. And we're going to get to Correa here in a moment. But like I said, the Trea Turner Dodgers thing, it made sense because of how good Trea Turner was, but as far as the profile of the player, a guy who swings and misses a lot, a guy who is so dependent upon his speed, a guy who's below average defensively, none of those things lined up with what the Dodgers typically look for. Dansby Swanson feels like the type of guy that the Dodgers typically go after. Solid bat-to-ball skills, solid defense, just sort of a reliable player, more so than a flashy player. Does that resonate with you? Like, do you agree with that?
Definitely. And, this isn't to say that if the Dodgers come and end up, Dansby Swanson is who they end up signing, I wouldn't come out and say, it was a terrible move and this and that. Like, he still is a very good shortstop. And I agree with you. I think he certainly does fit more of the, quote unquote mold of the Dodgers. And I think another interesting wrinkle to this would be a free agent that probably most people, maybe not so much now, but earlier in the year, wouldn't have guessed that he'd end up leaving the Atlanta Braves. And so it'd be kind of funny to see that, potentially play out 2 years in a row. Yeah.
Augustine commenting below in the chat, Swanson and Freddie Freeman, very close friends. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, not to say that guys will choose where they spend their next 6 years or take less money to be with friends, but it doesn't hurt. Let's talk about the other guy, Carlos Correa. We know there's been smoke of the Dodgers potentially being connected. We know how many fans feel. There's a pocket of fans that say, hey, he's the best guy out there, go get him. And I would agree with those folks. I think Carlos Correa is the best of the four, Xander Bogaerts being the fourth kind of guys out there. If I had to bet on one of those players for the next 7 or 8 years, I'd probably bet on Correa. But there's also a large contingent of fans, of which I have historically been a member of, which says, but I don't really care because I don't want to root for that guy, and I don't want to root for Carlos Correa. I don't like the fact that he cheated, but what I would say to people would say a lot of these guys cheat. I don't like the way he responded to the accusations of cheating. I think that's almost worse for me than the fact that he cheated. If he would have just owned up to it, instead, he made a big stink about it. We didn't cheat. He does the whole thing with Joe Kelly, on and on and on. I just would rather not root for Carlos Correa, so that's where I stand. What do you make of the Carlos Correa rumors and how serious the Dodgers might actually be on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll even maybe take it a step further than you. Like, there's cheating in base, quote unquote cheating in baseball, stealing signs from second base, and then there's what the Astros did. So, like, yes, if the pitchers use pine tar, they were using sticky substances even to skirt around the bands. Like, I get that. I think all of that stuff within reason is allowed. What the Astros did is complete, like, it's egregious. Like, it just is beyond what's acceptable, frankly. And I think it's not just the Dodgers who have said that. Like, other I mean, look at like that when the Astros were playing the Phillies in the World Series, the Phillies fans were letting them hear it. So there's that. And then 100% I agree with you. His response to it when, him telling off Cody Bellinger in the Dodgers clubhouse, basically, like, that's not going to go over well. And I know we'll get into Bellinger and what his future is with the team. Like, fine. But look, I'll say at this point, Clayton Kershaw pretty much is back. It's just a matter of, finalizing basically getting his pen to paper type thing. I don't want to tip my hand too much, but my assumption is that Justin Turner probably will be back as well. And so those are two pillars.
Don't forget about the captain, Austin Barnes, either there, Moreno.
Austin Barnes is still around. That's right. So those are 3 members of the Dodgers fabric that have been with the team for quite a long time, who were cheated by the Astros, who then would need to be okay with Carlos Correa. I don't see it. Now, I will say, if the Dodgers won't sign Correa without getting approval from those players.
Yeah.
If those players say fine, then I think we all just need to accept it. But I don't see that coming to be.
Yeah. Matty Man says, so can we only sign guys who pass our morality test? Does it matter if they are good players? And again, what we're saying is the morality test, it's a high bar. There's a very high bar before you get in the range of, I'm not really interested in signing you. And I would just say what the Astros and specifically Correa did, both in cheating and then what they did in response to the cheating, is the problem. Now, again, am I okay with them signing guys who are not perfect dudes? Of course I am, because a lot of these guys aren't perfect dudes. This is the same conversation, if we're being honest, a lot of people were having about Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer just hadn't done horrific things that were like personal for Dodgers fans necessarily. He hadn't cheated against the Dodgers. He hadn't insulted key people among the Dodgers that we felt strongly about. And so most people looked past it, and that didn't work out so well for them. Now, Carlos Correa's issues don't seem like the type that are going to be cropping up again in the future, aside from maybe some personality type stuff, again, which is only present in how he responded to these things. You hear no complaints about Carlos Correa as a teammate in Houston or in Minnesota. I think it's just the persona and the way that he rubbed a lot of Dodger fans the wrong way. And so to the question of morality and do guys have to pass a test, I would say the bar is very low for them to pass, and unfortunately for me, Carlos Correa is below it. What do you say?
Yeah, again, I still go back to, and I mean, if you want to dig up our videos on Trevor Bauer, I staunchly was saying at the time of the signing, I don't get it. His social media history, presence, whatever you want to call it, alone, I didn't think was worth the headache for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So now with Correa specifically, again, like, it wasn't like he just had pine tar too high on his bat, right? And maybe hit a big home run or had a big hit against the Dodgers. Like, the cheating that they were doing, and then again, his response to it when they were caught red-handed to still be defiant about it, is different than, saying, oh, we want a player to be, this clean character, this clean person, not have any sort of faults, because nobody's perfect. Like, we're not asking him to be that. But with Correa, it's a completely different story. But again, I will table it as, if the Dodgers were to sign him, my assumption would be that it was cleared with Clayton Kershaw, with Justin Turner if he's back, maybe even Austin Barnes, maybe even Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, because they're team leaders as well now. And at that point, if that's the case, then hey, like, everybody else just needs to get on board.
Yeah, and to be clear, Correa's beef is with the Dodgers and Dodger fans specifically. Like, it's not like other teams have to look past the exact same stuff, because yes, Correa cheated. He didn't cheat their team out of the World Series. He didn't openly mock and insult their favorite players. And so you can say this is all ridiculous and you can say this is all silly, but I would just point to the fact that this is sports and we are fans, and this is how this type of thing works. At the end of the day, if I've got to watch a team for 162 games, I would prefer to like the guys that are playing in all 162. I would prefer to not feel mixed emotions rooting for some of these guys. And sometimes you feel mixed emotions for moral reasons, because the guy you're rooting for and that is helping your team win is not a role model necessarily. And other times it's just because for whatever reason you don't really like the guy. If Madison Bumgarner became a Dodger, I wouldn't be fired up about it. There's plenty of guys that are on that list, but Carlos Correa is just near the top of it as far as I'm concerned. The Dodgers could have won a World Series. As somebody pointed out, he cost somebody like you, Darvish, a ton of money because of how the sign stealing scandal went. And you don't have to agree. That's the beauty of sports. That's the beauty of talking about sports. But I think that's where I land. And I'll be clear. I've been clear. I think Carlos Correa is the best on the field shortstop for the Dodgers to go and sign. The problem is the off the field stuff makes it complicated. Am I saying that if Carlos Correa signs with the Dodgers, I'm going to boo him every single time? No. Am I soft? Am I going to eventually come around on Carlos Correa, and 45 days into the season, am I going to start talking myself into he's a changed guy, he's a positive guy, he's doing the right things? Of course I am. But we're not there yet. I don't need to talk myself into it. And so today I'm going to sit here and say I'm not excited about the potential of signing Carlos Correa. Again, it's all just rumors. It's all speculation. Where the reports are unlikely for Trea Turner to come back. Dansby Swanson, Carlos Correa, those types of guys, backup options. Xander Bogaerts has yet to be connected to the Dodgers, which is surprising. He will at some point. I guarantee you that. But just some things to point. James says, it's not apples to apples. We rooted for Jeff Kent. I couldn't stand Jeff Kent. Jeff Kent's a perfect example of a guy that I hated to root for. I hated all of it. Jason Schmidt, maybe to a lesser extent. I don't know why it was Jeff Kent that I couldn't stand, but I don't like Jeff Kent. So that's a great example there. Matt, can you think of, are there guys that the Dodgers have signed that you have had trouble rooting for? Kent is a perfect example as far as I'm concerned.
So the Kent one didn't really bother me too much. I will say the Jason Schmidt was more of like, of course, I remember him pitching very well against the Dodgers, and then thinking, of course, the Dodgers signed him, and now he's hurt all the time, and it's going to completely backfire. I'll do the Jimmy Rollins, Shane Victorino.
Oh, Shane Victorino! I couldn't stand that guy.
Yeah, we're odd. That was interesting.
Yeah. Oh, Shane Victorino was on my list of guys that I could not stand around baseball. That's a fantastic pull right there, because Victorino, he's probably at the top of the list. I'm sure there were people that couldn't stand Milton Bradley. I'm sure that was a guy that a lot of people weren't fired up to have. I talked myself into Milton Bradley. I'm going to be honest. I'm trying to think of who. I mean, obviously Puig in some circles was a polarizing figure. Not in these circles, I can tell you that. Big pro Puig guy over here. But yeah, Joe Kelly. I mean, Joe Kelly was another one, drilling Hanley Ramirez in the ribs back in the day.
Yeah, that definitely was interesting. But at least, I mean, with the I don't know, maybe the fastball slipped, right? Like, I don't know.
We saw enough of Joe Kelly for that to become believable. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. All right, let's move on to more qualifying offer stuff. The other one, as we talked about, Tyler Anderson does receive the qualifying offer. Just a refresher, the Dodgers had 5 days after the World Series ended to extend any of their potential free agents a qualifying offer. That offer is a 1-year, $19.65 million contract. Anderson now has 5 days, just like Trea Turner, to either accept or reject that qualifying offer. If he rejects it, he becomes a free agent, with one caveat. The team signing him would have to forfeit a draft pick in order to sign him. The Dodgers would receive a draft pick if he signs elsewhere. What round that draft pick would be following depends on how much money. If it's under $50 million, it is after the second round. If it's above $50 million, I believe it's after the first round. So that's what determines that. Tyler Anderson gets the 1-year, $19.65 million deal. This right after signing an $8 million deal last year. There were people that were not excited about this, Matt. Again, we prepped people. We warned people that it was going to happen. Yes, 19.65 as an AAV number for Tyler Anderson is a big number, but that's the price you pay for a 1-year deal. Now, he hasn't accepted it. Were you surprised that this offer was given to him, and how do you think he'll respond to that offer?
I wasn't at all surprised about it. I was with you, like fully expecting it, and I am fine either way if he does accept it. I think, if you want to split hairs and say he's, quote unquote overpaid, I mean, it's for 1 year, and he pitched very well last season. And frankly, like, he was pressed. He signed with the Dodgers in a relief role. I think made 1 or 2 relief appearances and was needed in the rotation right away because Heaney got hurt, and Anderson ended up staying in the rotation the rest of the year. So and he had a great season. And in light of what happened to Kershaw with Buehler, with everything else, like, think about what happened. Where would the Dodgers have been without Tyler Anderson type thing? And so what I'm surprised by more so, honestly, is that there have been some, I believe Mike Petriello was one, and either John Heyman or Jim Bowden, or it was either Jim Bowden or Bob Nightingale, one of the two, predicting that Anderson would accept it. That's what shocks me. I think he can go out and get a 2 or 3 year deal.
Yeah.
3 years, maybe 45-ish million. And I think my belief would be he'd be better off doing that just in case, because this season was completely different than what we've seen from him. Now, some of that could be credit to him buying into what the Dodgers sold in terms of adjusting, pitch. We've seen it before, right? From this organization, they take a pitcher, they make some adjustments, and it unlocks a bunch of things. But on the off chance it doesn't, like if you're Tyler Anderson, then you basically only cashed in for 1 guaranteed year. Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, my question I was going to ask is, would you be mad if Tyler Anderson left? There are rumors that the Angels and Red Sox were interested. This was before he received a qualifying offer, so maybe some interest left. But, I mean, I'm wondering if Tyler Anderson gets a big let's say he gets a 3-year, $39 million offer from the Angels, and the Dodgers can either match that or they can say no, and they get a back end of the second round draft pick in exchange for it. Like, which of those two scenarios would you prefer?
I would hold my full judgment until until basically spring training, because I would need to see, what's your pitching plan? But like I said a few minutes ago, the Dodgers need starting pitching. Even with Clayton Kershaw back, the Dodgers still need starting pitching. And so if you don't re-sign Tyler Anderson, short of maybe somebody coming in and saying, here's $60 million for 3 years. Yeah. I'm going to be very interested to see, what are you planning on then? Because Ryan Pepio, I don't think, is necessarily ready to be a full season starter in the rotation. We didn't see Bobby Miller at all this year. And so if anything, he would be like summer, kind of the Pepio treatment, maybe spot starts here and there, maybe a September call-up. But yeah, it would shock me. And if they fill their hole in the rotation some other way, great. But if not, and they want the draft pick, I would be questioning that decision.
Yeah, as of today, the Dodgers have one guy that you pencil in for 28 plus starts next season, Julio Urias. I don't think anybody's penciling Gonsolin or May in for 28 plus starts. I don't think anybody's penciling in, Pepio and Grove and those types of guys for that many starts. You're not penciling Kershaw in for that many starts. Obviously, Walker Buehler is going to miss a bunch of time. And so I'm with you. There's going to be a number where people get uncomfortable, but the Dodgers have to sign someone. And would you prefer them to get a second-round pick in exchange for Anderson and then, go give Andrew Heaney 2 years and $22 million or something like that? I mean, maybe, but Heaney was dramatically worse than Tyler Anderson was. Now, some of the metric stuff is way better on Heaney because of all the strikeouts and can you limit the home run ball, that type of thing. But I just think the thing about Anderson that people overlook is the fact that he's got 2 straight seasons of 30 to 32 starts. He made 32 appearances, I believe, for the Dodgers. As you said, the first 2 not technically starts, but might as well have been long relief appearances. And so I think just the fact that even if Tyler Anderson regresses to being like a 3.7 ERA type starter, if he's giving you 30 to 32 starts at that, and you can get that for $12 to $13 million a year on a 2 or 3 year deal, I think you need that if you're the Dodgers, just as a guy that you can trust to throw out there. Now, do you want another lefty? Do you care if it's Urias, Kershaw, and Anderson is the 3 guys at the top? Who cares? I wouldn't. But those are the questions I think the Dodgers would need to be asking themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And Heaney, I think he's fine if he factors into their pitching plans in some capacity, but I don't think he can be like your top 2 signing because he pitched well when healthy, but that's the big caveat. Unfortunately, he had 2 separate shoulder injuries throughout the year, and so I don't think he's somebody, and he has an injury history, so I don't think he's somebody who can be relied upon to give you, like you said, the 30+ starts.
Yeah, and we mentioned the Angels, Red Sox. We know there are plenty of teams in baseball that are desperate for pitching, and so is a team going to go out and try and sign Tyler Anderson? I would bet they do. How the Dodgers respond is going to be the interesting question there. One other bit of sort of big news that came out this week is Justin Turner. His club option, was not picked up. He had a $14 million club option, I believe, with a $2 million buyout. The Dodgers opted to buy that out. It sounded like they were trying to negotiate an agreement beforehand, could not reach one. Justin Turner, officially a free agent. You hinted earlier you expect him back after this whole situation plays out. But were you surprised that the Dodgers and Turner couldn't come to some sort of agreement before the deadline for that option to be picked up or not?
I was a little surprised. I thought, I forgot, was it Andrew Friedman or Brandon Gomes? It might have been Friedman who said they were discussing different things with
I think it was Friedman.
And it's not like him to publicly say something like that. So I thought, okay, they're close to figuring out, hey, we're going to decline this option right now, but then quickly re-sign you to a 2-year deal type thing. And I've been more surprised that now, since making him a free agent, that nothing has sort of come of that situation. But like I said earlier, I still expect him back. I think it'll take probably 2 years, maybe some sort of vesting option or team option again for a 3rd year type thing, just maybe to get the AAV down, and maybe just if it works out, if Turner's playing well and they want to keep him around for that 3rd year, then great. But yeah, I see him back at some point.
If Justin Turner insists on a guaranteed 2-year deal, are you drawing the line at 1 plus a club option?
No, I would do 2 years.
Okay.
I think if that's the case, the Dodgers would probably say, okay, well, we'll guarantee you 2 years, but the salary is going to look a little different than maybe what you would prefer.
Yeah, Augustine says 2 years and $20 million, so maybe it's like a 1 year, $12 million deal with a second year at $8 million or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I would say, and we will mention a little bit, about Hanser Alberto not getting brought back. But I think the thing with Alberto is at some point you run out of 40-man and 26-man roster spots. And so that would be the only thing. I think a lot of times we look at a Justin Turner and say, just guarantee the second year. Who cares if that's what it takes to bring him back? But then the second year, you've got to do something with the guy, and you don't want to eat $8 million for nothing, and yet you've got to get a lot of young guys that you're going to need to make room for, and guys that are going to be productive, have some versatility. And so having a guaranteed second year, I almost wonder if it's less about the money and more about the roster flexibility that you then have with that. Also, we know the Dodgers are going to be trying to get under the luxury tax. I shouldn't say that. They might try and get under the luxury tax at some point in the next couple of years. And Justin Turner feels like the type of player that if you could save yourself $10 million on, you should. Now, that's Justin Turner, the player on paper. Justin Turner, the person, may be a different story. Maybe that's not where you start to cut some corners. Briefly, I mentioned it. Hanser Alberto, Jimmy Nelson, Danny Duffy, all of those guys sent to become free agents. Duffy was an obvious one. He was due to make way too much money. Jimmy Nelson, you were willing to light Mark Walters $2 million on fire in order to get him back, but they decide not to. Hanser Alberto, $2 million. He's not back either. I mean, none of those surprised me. We all think Jimmy Nelson will probably be back in the minor league camp. Were you surprised, like, ultimately that Alberto was released by the Dodgers?
That one did surprise me a little bit, but then after the decision sort of set in, and then I thought about it, just kind of looking forward, and it's like you just alluded to, the Dodgers have young players coming up, and so frankly, without maybe giving too much away of a video we'll have coming for people, Miguel Vargas arguably is the biggest beneficiary from Hanser Alberto being made a free agent, and I think credit to Miguel Vargas, he might have had a role in that being the case in terms of the Dodgers, believing in his kind of potential. I think Edwin Rios will factor into that equation again, but yeah, it still did surprise me a little bit.
Yeah. I see some folks throwing questions. Again, we got one more topic here. I want to talk about Blake Treinen, and then we can get to your Cody Bellinger and Tampa Bay Rays trade conversations. All right, but let's talk Treinen, because this was the other big news that we actually haven't talked about yet on this channel. Had shoulder surgery, his 2023 status officially in doubt. He had right shoulder surgery to repair his labrum and rotator cuff. There is no timeline for his return. It's potentially season ending for 2023. This after making just 5 appearances in 2022. Again, not surprising based on all of the reports we had about his shoulder. Yes, he came back and was available in the postseason, but it never really felt like, I mean, they knew he took chances in order to be ready for the postseason last year. They knew they were going to have to bite the bullet at some point. This is it. Now they're paying him a lot of money for this year. They have a team option for 2024, I believe, as well. But Treinen missing all of 2023 is a big deal. Daniel Hudson, another guy that was potentially going to be back, but he's probably going to miss all of 2023. All of a sudden, that Dodger bullpen has a lot of nice pieces still, don't get me wrong, but some of the depth at the back end is starting to look a little wobbly.
Yeah, this is hindsight's always 2020. I know you and I were sort of skeptical and wondering like how it was working that Treinen was going to be back when season-ending shoulder surgery was recommended to him at some point, like maybe April or May when they examined his initial injury. I think in retrospect, he probably should have just moved ahead with that because then he would have, 10 months, 12-month recovery even, he would have factored into 2023. And this year, the Dodgers ended up having, admittedly, somewhat surprisingly, a deeper bullpen than any of us probably would have guessed, with, Yency Almonte really stepping up and Evan Phillips taking a huge step forward.
Yeah.
So now just the timing of it definitely throws a wrench into next season and what the Dodgers are going to potentially be planning for. As it were, they have an opening at closer that maybe they wouldn't fill. I think Brandon Gomes might have alluded to being open or comfortable with, kind of still sticking with the closer by committee approach. But now you have one of who has been one of your firemen unavailable for. I don't expect him to pitch in 2023. If he's back at all, I think it would be, I don't think it's something you can plan on.
Yeah. Treinen due to make $8 million this year. Daniel Hudson due to make $6.5 million this year. Again, I don't know. Do we know a timeline on Daniel Hudson? He tore up his knee. That's typically a 12-month injury at least, right?
It should be, but he spoke late in the season to a few of us in the clubhouse, and he said he was targeting kind of being ready by opening day. Wow. And again, I've forgive me for not remembering if it was Friedman or Gomes who said it I think it was Gomes during the GM meetings in Vegas. He said that Daniel Hudson is throwing and that hopefully he'll be ready for camp. I don't know if he will be at the outset of spring training, especially because the Dodgers play things cautiously. But I mean, early in the season is my guess he'd be back.
Yeah, just looking at their roster, here's relievers that they would have under team control still. Caleb Ferguson going into his second year of arbitration. Evan Phillips, his first year of arbitration, first of 4 years, according to Spot Track, which is amazing. Yency Almonte, second year of arbitration. Gratterall, first year of arbitration. Bickford under team control. Brule under team control. Gonzalez under team control. And then obviously Vesia under team control as well. And so, again, it's not to say that the Dodgers bullpen is going to be empty, but Chris Martin is a free agent. Craig Kimbrell is a free agent. Kimbrell, I don't think anyone wants back, but they've got some of these guys. Chris Martin's the guy that I would like to see back personally, if they can make that happen. But it feels like there's room there. And yet you see some of these contracts that are starting to get handed out to relievers, Matt, and Terrifying stuff.
Yeah, a little bit. I will say, though, at least the relief pitchers the Dodgers would be looking at are older than the big contracts that have been flying out the door so far. But, I mean, yeah, if the market is just set high, then, even some of the more veteran guys like Chris Martin, who pitch very well, he could kind of stick to whatever ask he may have and say, look, like, I look at the market, look at what I did, and this is what it's going to take.
Yeah, Rafael Montero signs with the Astros, 3 years, $34.5 million. And then, of course, Edwin Diaz. I mean, his contract is just ridiculous. I don't even know where to begin on the Edwin Diaz contract. So those are kind of the headlines from this past week. Let's get to some questions while we're here. I know people have asked a lot about Bellinger. My stance on Bellinger, I'm not going to say it was an original idea, but I was early. On my Bellinger stance of, I think that if it were up to me, I would non-tender him. I would say, not going to offer you arbitration. You're a free agent. Obviously, you could try and trade him. I can't imagine there's a team out there that wants to trade him and pay him fourth year of arbitration money after what he has already made. But if I was the Dodgers, I would not in any universe be comfortable paying Cody Bellinger $17+ million this season. Where are you at on how you would handle the Bellinger situation?
I would. Oh man, it's tough. I'm not sure of the path I would take to get there, but I would still have him on the team next season. Okay. I know that's not a popular opinion. I am in the camp who values his defensive ability and talent. I think the Dodgers have a group of position players that are deep enough to sort of make up. Look, like no lineup is perfect. Like you look across baseball, everybody has. I mean, now I guess it could be 9 hitter, but a number 8 or a number 9 hitter, right? Every team has one. So I think the Dodgers could get away with carrying him like that if he's sort of struggling still. I think maybe there could be a little more clarity given. Maybe he's working with too many different hitting coaches, whether when he goes back to Arizona or just whatever the case may be.
Does he listen to any of them?
I mean, that would be a question he'd have to answer. So all of that being said, I came around to your concept, your belief that I think he will be non-tendered at this point. And I've mentioned it before. The tipping point for me was when they still benched him in Game 4 of the NLDS. I thought up until then, the Dodgers, Dave Roberts, had shown their basically unwavering confidence in him, much to the chagrin of a lot of fans. And then Game 4 came around and they benched him. And I thought, man, maybe they don't necessarily value just the defense as much as I sort of thought they did.
Yeah. THB's asking, does he listen to any coaches? I don't know if you're questioning why I asked that, but there have been quotes from coaches basically that have sort of danced around the issue from my perspective, reading between the lines of he kind of just does his own thing. And we just kind of have to wait it out with him. Some people are asking tender or non-tender. So the way that it works is Bellinger is under team control. He's in the 4th year of arbitration. So the way that process begins is that by this Friday, the Dodgers have to either tender him a contract if they would like to have him next year. They tender him a contract, and then the two begin negotiating on a salary. If they cannot agree on a salary, then it goes to arbitration. Both the team submits a number, the player submits a number, and a board of arbiters decide which of those two is the better number. But you can avoid that whole process by non-tendering. Once you tender a guy a contract, you are basically guaranteeing them a contract that is either going to be decided by you or decided by an arbiter. And so you don't get to that point and say, oh, $18 million, way too much, never mind, we're out. At that point, you're already committed. So this Friday is when the Dodgers would have to decide what to do. As Matt alluded to, is it possible the Dodgers try and work out a 2 or 3 year contract with Cody Bellinger at maybe a lower AAV that's good for both sides? Because Bellinger knows if he gets non-tendered, he's probably not sniffing $17 million a year like he would in arbitration. And so lots of stuff to kind of navigate there as far as Bellinger goes. But that's where we're at. Let's get to some other questions here. We'll scroll
I
through
will
the
say
chat.
really quick while you're scrolling, Andrew Friedman did say during the winter meetings that he knows that they believe in Bellinger's talent still. And I mean, not that I expect him to bash him by any means, but he did also specifically mention and highlight that he knows he's been working with the Dodgers hitting coaches this offseason. So I don't know, maybe something productive comes of that. I mean, look, it would be kind of a healthy offseason for him. He did avoid the IL this year. So we'll see. Yeah,
here we go. Well, here my burner's got a question for us. My question is, where the heck is Daniel Starkin? And as bad of a weekend as I'm having, Matt, Daniel Starkin is currently covering the Los Angeles Lakers, so It might be worse for him.
Yeah, I think if Daniel had it his way, he would be on here with us instead of needing to. I'm pretty sure he's at Staples. Yeah, he's at Staples Center tonight for the Laker game, so he's a little preoccupied. Maybe he's watching. Hey, Daniel.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe this is him. Maybe this is his way of not telling any of us that he's not paying attention to the Lakers and the Nets right now. But there we go. Jeez Louise. Friedman equals Pelinka. This might be the most offensive thing I've seen in our chat in a long, long time, Matt.
Yeah, I'm glad you highlighted that one. I was right about to point it out as well. Look, Gary, I mean...
Gary, have you watched the Lakers? Gary, have you watched the Lakers and the teams that Pelinka has assembled?
Yeah, I get some of the frustration with Andrew Friedman and the Dodgers, falling short. But, I mean, Pelinka, unfortunately, is not in Friedman's stratosphere. Yeah. And we can just leave it at that. And I see CK Chin telling me crypto, not Staples. I am of the era that it is going to be Staples Center forever, and my kids will call it Staples Center. Yeah,
there you go. Marco asks, if they go to arbitration, can they settle for under 19? Oh, my dog decided to join the show. She was sick of the Lakers game as well, I guess. This is one question, Matt. Have you been able to find an answer to this? I was under the impression it can't go down. I don't know if that's actually true.
I do have an answer. So by MLB rule, the maximum any player either like just under 3 years of service time and still under team control or going through the arbitration process, the most that their salary can be decreased from the previous year is 20%.
Got it.
So it can happen, but in arbitration and frankly in any scenario, like it's extremely rare. I think this would be the one case where it's sort of just it's
20%
tough.
Feels light.
It is, but it is tough though because I wrote about Bellinger's potential, the Dodgers' decision with him, and if you look at his stats, this year was better than last year. So if he got 17 million going into this season and then had a better season, he should technically see a raise, right? So I think that maybe could be a factor into the Dodgers just doing a non-tender with either then a quick agreement on a multi-year deal or just with an understanding of they'll then take, maybe the next week or so to work out a new contract.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get to one last question here. I think this is a good one. I've seen it a lot. Vincent asks, do the Dodgers offer deGrom? What do you think, Matt?
I don't think so. I think if they had any real interest in him, we would have seen it by now because his market isn't necessarily blowing up a ton, right? It looks like it sort of needs to be the Mets. I think there were some reports of him reaching out to the Rangers and there being some mutual interest there. But I think if the Dodgers were going to get involved in deGrom, I guess I'll preface, I need to kind of back it up. If deGrom's market stays relatively quiet, I could see the Dodgers jumping in and saying, hey, here's $50 million for 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But a long-term deal, I don't see it.
If deGrom is reaching out to the Rangers, first of all, good business decision. Second of all, I mean, it just, look, we know if you're signing with the Rangers, we kind of know where your head's at, and the Dodgers probably aren't among the teams that you're going to eventually land with there, because if you're interested with the Rangers, you're just looking for the top dollar. It's almost a guarantee that the Dodgers are not going to be the team that ends up giving that to them. And so, somebody's saying in here $80 million for 2 years. Look, I mean, people are worried about Kershaw's health. I was shocked. We were in a live show, Matt, and somebody pointed out that deGrom is what, 3 months younger than Clayton Kershaw or 3 months older or something like that?
I forgot what it was, but I remember being surprised by that same detail because it's not what I would have guessed. And I will say, I mean, look, I've been on here saying, hey, it's not my money, spend it, but $80 million over 2 years, that's a bit much.
3 months younger. He's Kershaw is March of '88. deGrom is June of '88. I'm November of '88. So there you go. It's a good year. It's a good year for just 2 out of 3. 1988 win 2 out of 3 on Hall of Fame pitchers there with Kershaw and deGrom. But there we go. So I just deGrom one worries me. All that money for a guy who's been as unhealthy as he has been and at the age he is. Could it work out? Yes. Could it turn out terribly? Probably. So that's where I land on that one. Anything we missed here, Matt? I've got a question for you. Something we didn't tackle in our last one. This is Ask Matt Moreno, a food question. And I didn't prompt you for this one, but I was just thinking. I was getting a little tired. Raider game kind of took it out of me this afternoon. So I went and dug through my kids' Halloween candy bowl and said, I just need a little bit of sugar before we hop on the show here. And I tweeted this at you. And I didn't really get a full response from you, and so I want to know. Give me your top 5 maybe Halloween candies. What's your I mean, like, are you trick or treating? Are you putting candy out in a bowl for folks? What's the setup you got there?
I've gone trick or treating with family members who were here, like my goddaughter and my nephew when they were younger, and they still lived in California. My wife and I would go. It's my brother-in-law's kids, so we'd go out to their place and take them trick or treating. I can't remember the last time I myself went trick or treating. I mean, I wasn't big on it as a kid anyway.
Yeah.
For multiple reasons. One, I've never really cared to dress up. Two, they're always 9 times out of 10 there was a Laker game on or something was happening that I would just rather watch.
Okay.
So that's that. In terms, I'm not a big sweets person in general.
Okay.
So giving you top 5 candies might be kind of hard. Let me see. So I will say my undisputed one that is my favorite is a Snickers.
Okay.
That's like my favorite can. My goddaughter, when she was younger, we'd take her. She would know, like, she'd get them at the house, and she'd walk up to me and take it out of her little bag and hand it to me because she knew that's what I was looking for.
Okay. So this is positive. This is a positive Moreno food take.
It is. I enjoyed Jolly Ranchers. I think they're
okay.
They're not quite as popular. It's not what you think in terms of.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a solid candy. Nobody's disappointed with the Jolly Rancher unless it's like a grape or a lemon one. But
and so let's see those two. After that, I'll probably disappoint you. I'm okay with Kit Kats.
Oh gosh,
I like a Crunch Bar, but
just average.
I'm simple, so
you just a plain Hershey's chocolate guy, just fired up for the plain Hershey's chocolate bar.
I don't like Hershey's. I don't like Hershey's.
What about Red Vines? Red Vines versus Twizzlers.
Oh, Red Vines all the way.
Ugh,
absolutely.
Do you like Whoppers?
No.
Okay. Yeah, Kit Kats, the funny story for us is like our girls have, it's a longer story, but allergic to peanuts in our house, and everything has peanuts. Even M&M's say made in the same factory as peanuts. Yeah. So we have to avoid basically everything. So it's hilarious. And then gummy stuff was out because of some teeth stuff. So anyways, like all they had left was basically like Kit Kats. Now our girls don't eat a ton of candy, don't eat a ton of sweets. So we were like, here you go, you can have a Kit Kat. They thought it was like the greatest thing in the history of the world because they've never tasted a ton of candy. And I was just like, gosh, this is so pathetic for my kids. I feel, on one hand, like how beautiful is it that they are eating a Kit Kat and getting more enjoyment out of a Kit Kat than any human has ever gotten out of a Kit Kat in the history of the world. But there we go. So okay, people aren't happy about our candy talk. Yeah, let's. I mean, did you see like one other thing we didn't get to? I'll just throw in here at the end was that the Rays were going to be selling off a bunch of guys on their 40-man roster. Blake Williams from DodgerBlue.com, one of our sites, he was tweeting about this. Let me see if I can find his message about it. Basically, that they've got a bunch of guys they need to get to, and they have too many guys on their 40-man roster, and the end of this week or whatever is when they have to decide on what to do with those. Here we go. I found the sources from John Morosi. Rays engaged in advanced trade negotiations ahead of roster protection deadline. At this point, industry observers expect multiple trades by the club over the next 48 hours. Blake said, Rays who make sense for the Dodgers and could possibly be traded: JP Fireisen, Manuel Margot, Tyler Glasnow, who's owed $25 million, Pete Fairbanks, Andrew Kittredge, and Brooks Raley among those. I'll just say this up front. The Dodgers are going to have a ton of guys on their 40-man roster as well, so keep that in mind. But some interesting names. We know the Dodgers and Rays have had some trade negotiations and made some trades in the past as well. And so do you expect anything to come of a Dodgers-Rays trade in the next 48 hours?
I think, I think it is like a close to 50% chance. But I don't necessarily believe it would be like a huge sort of impact deal. I think Andrew Friedman obviously is very familiar with that organization, maybe less so now with some of the guys who are going through there because he's been removed for so long. But it wouldn't fully shock me if they do work something out. But I don't necessarily think it would be for like a Glasnow or maybe one of their higher end guys that they might be looking to move. Yeah.
Glasnow signed a 2-year, $30 million extension. So he's due $5.3 million next season and then $25 million in 2024. And so now, I mean, for the Rays, some people would look at that and say they're not going to trade him. They just signed him to this. The flip side is they preserved his value. The more years he has under team control and $25 million, the more value they could get from him in a trade. The Rays sometimes keep their best players, oftentimes trade them. And so just something to watch. Admittedly, I haven't done a ton of digging on all of those guys. This is a new report from Morosi, and so something to monitor in the days ahead. I know someone was asking about some Jock Peterson rumors. We've talked about Aaron Judge on here before. Look, it is silly season on the rumors stuff. Are the Dodgers interested in these guys? Probably. Like, if you're going to sign 5 guys, you're probably interested in 20 of them, and then things slowly get whittled down. Guys that are in your price range, guys that aren't, guys you prefer versus guys you don't. So some stuff to watch there. But yes, we appreciate you all joining us here. Dodger Heads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Again, an escape for all of us from the Lakers, who have been terrible, the Raiders, who have been terrible, the Rams, who have been terrible. Basically, there's some hockey teams. Our boss tells us there's some hockey teams doing well in Los Angeles. Not a big hockey guy. LAFC won the MLS. There you go. So Southern California, it's been a rough go. You said USC had a good weekend. UCLA did not. So anyways, we're glad we could talk some Dodgers here. Again, lots of news last week, probably a busy week up ahead with some of this stuff, the 40-man stuff and needing to tender some folks. But after that, expect some quiet times. We'll be here pretty consistently on Sunday nights. I can't guarantee we'll be here every single Sunday night, but most Sunday nights you can pencil us in, check our Twitter account, send us a message, and check in. That's the plan. So that's Matt Moreno. My name is Jeff Spiegel. As always, we appreciate you joining us. Make sure you're following DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958 on social media. Subscribe, ring the notification bell here. As well, if you're listening to this on a podcast, or if you are a podcast person, please like, rate, review, subscribe, follow, whatever you got to do on Google, Spotify, Apple. We'd greatly, greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your night. And even though the season's over, Matt, we always say it, go Dodgers.